What if you could be arrested for how you pray? Not for hurting anyone, not for breaking any law of reason, but for speaking to your ancestors, lighting a candle, calling on a name that wasn't Christian. That's not a question from a horror movie. That's American history. And in some places, it's also American present. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll see how laws once used to ban spirits and saints are still being used to control how we believe today. Let's start where the earth meets the spirit. Imagine you're part of a Haitian family in 1800s Louisiana. You gather under moonlight to honor the spirit's Liwa. You offer food, you drum, you sing. But one night, police raid your ritual. They destroy the altar, arrest the priestess, and call your worship satanic. That was Vodou in America, twisted by white fear into something monstrous. But Vodou isn't evil. It's a spiritual system based in healing, honoring ancestors, and balancing life forces. In New Orleans, it was practiced in secret, not to hide from God, but to hide from the law. Now travel west. You're in Arizona. You're a member of a Native American tribe. You're holding a sacred peyote ceremony, a ritual that brings healing, visions, connection to spirit guides. But in 1918, the US bans peyote under anti-narcotics laws. No matter that it's a plant, no matter that it's sacred, you can now be arrested for praying with it. Ceremonial grounds were raided, elders jailed, tribes forced to choose, abandon the ritual or take it underground. Some risked everything. They built fires in silence, passed the plant hand to hand like contraband, spoke prayers in whispers so the wind could carry them without drawing attention. And it wasn't until 1994, 76 years later, that federal law even acknowledged it as a religious rite, but only for recognized tribes, only under strict rules, only with a license to believe. Think about that, needing permission to pray. And this wasn't just about native practices. In early America, Catholics were persecuted too. In Protestant colonies, Mass was banned. Priests had to operate in secret. Public altars were illegal. Immigrants from Ireland, Italy, and Mexico faced harassment just for lighting candles to saints. Some buried statues of Mary in their backyards at night so no one would see. Others held church in barns, hiding the crucifix behind a blanket. Because the moment your belief threatened the religious status quo, the law got involved. And then came Santeria, a blend of West African traditions and Catholic imagery, practiced in Cuban and Puerto Rican communities. Its followers honored Orisha's deities with their own colors, foods, dances. But in many parts of the US, Santeria was dismissed as witchcraft. Animal sacrifices, sacred in ritual, were banned. Altars were seized. Practitioners labeled as dangerous or mentally unstable. In 1993, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of a Santeria church's right to sacrifice animals. That's how recent this battle is. It had to go to the Supreme Court just for people to keep worshipping the way they always had. In African American communities, hoodoo and root work were policed in silence. These were traditions of herbal healing, ancestor veneration, and protection spells passed down through generations, especially among the enslaved. But in the 20th century, practicing root work publicly could get you fired, or labeled a fraud, or worse, arrested under vague public decency laws. So people stopped talking. Spiritual baths became folk remedies. Protection charms became just jewelry. And yet, behind closed doors, the prayers were still said. Because when belief is forced underground, it becomes even stronger. Even speaking in tongues, a Christian practice, was once enough to get you institutionalized. In the early 1900s, charismatic worshippers who entered trance states or spiritual ecstasy were labeled insane. They were locked away, diagnosed with religious mania. In one case, a woman was removed from her church and put into an asylum simply because she said she felt God speak through her. To many, it was the Holy Spirit. To others, it was mental illness. And just like that, spiritual experience became a medical emergency. It didn't stop with adults. Children weren't spared either. In some schools, students were punished for wearing religious jewelry: a cross, a head wrap, a pendant. One girl in Texas was told to remove her rosary. Another in California was suspended for bringing sage to school for a native cleansing ritual. Across the country, dress codes were used to police belief, especially non-Christian ones. If your spirituality wasn't mainstream, it was seen as a disruption. But what's more disruptive, burning incense to calm your spirit, or being told your identity is against the rules. Here's the most chilling part. Some of these bans are still active today. In parts of the US, fortune-telling remains illegal. Yes, literally. Cities like Philadelphia and New York still have anti-divination laws on the books, written over a century ago. You could technically be fined or even arrested for giving someone a tarot reading, unless you label it for entertainment purposes only. So let's ask the obvious. What's the real danger here? That someone lights a candle, or that they find peace outside the approved system? Because that's what it all comes down to: control. These laws weren't about protecting people, they were about preserving power. A different prayer felt like a threat. A different ceremony looked like rebellion. A different God meant someone might stop listening to yours. So they made it illegal. But here's the twist they didn't expect. The spirit doesn't scare easy. You can ban the drum, but people will find rhythm. You can outlaw the altar, but someone will still whisper thanks. You can arrest the priestess, but her children will carry the chant. Because spirituality is survival, and you can't kill what keeps people alive. So I'll leave you with this. What would you do if your prayer was outlawed tomorrow? Would you hide it? Would you fight for it? Or would you pass it down, like so many before you did? In secret, in silence, in strength. Subscribe to uncover more forbidden stories from America's past.